I never thought the most humiliating day of my life would be served with sweet tea, apple pie and fake smiles. I was sitting at the dining table in my husband's parents' house in small-town Indiana. There were flowers on the table. His mom, Lorraine, had just placed a warm pecan pie in the center like we were all there to celebrate Thanksgiving early. Except this wasn't a holiday. This was an ambush. To my left sat my husband, Drew. 35 years old. Good job, perfect hair, perfect smile. The kind of man everyone at church called a provider. The kind of man who hid his cruelty behind politeness and respectability. And to my right, sitting smugly in a silk blouse and tight jeans, was his mistress, Haley. She was 26. Blonde. Pretty. The type of girl who knew exactly what her appeal was and had no shame about weaponizing it. And across from me, sipping coffee like this was a casual brunch, sat his mother, his father, his older sister, and even his niece. Full family gathering. All present to witness what Drew had orchestrated. He cleared his throat and said, "Riley, now's a good time to say what you need to say." I stared at him like he had spoken another language. "I'm sorry." And blinked. He gently touched my hand, performative, and said again, "Say what you came here to say." I looked at his mother. She nodded. I looked at Haley. She smiled. And that's when it hit me. They expected me to apologize. To her. To his mistress. "I'm not doing this," I said, my voice tight, my chest burning. "I'm not apologizing to the woman who's been sleeping with my husband." Drew leaned forward. Come. "Riley, we've been over this. You blew up at her. You embarrassed her in public. You made a scene. Because she was sitting on your lap at a barbecue. She didn't know you'd be there. It wasn't the right place or time." I turned to his mother who had raised him, this man, and asked, "Do you think I should apologize?" She said without flinching, "You're a grown woman. Sometimes grace means taking the high road." I felt my throat close. My eyes burned. My palms went cold. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about an affair. This was about control, power, humiliation. And they were all in on it. 6 months earlier things weren't perfect, but I didn't think they were this bad. Drew and I had been married 8 years. We met at a 4th of July barbecue when I was 25. He was charming, confident, the kind of man who said all the right things. He wasn't my usual type, a little too polished, a little too intense, but he made me feel safe. Chosen. Like I was finally going to be someone's forever. In the early years we were good. He'd bring me flowers just because. Rub my feet after long workdays. Tell his friends how lucky he was. But slowly, so slowly I barely noticed, things shifted. The compliments turned into constructive criticism. The surprises became expectations. And the man who once said, "You're beautiful in anything," now asked, "Are you really wearing that?" I brushed it off. Marriage has rough patches, right? Until the text. They started small. Flirty emoji. A message sent too late. The classic coworker excuse. But one night, after he'd gone to bed and left his phone on the nightstand, something in me said, "Look, I know that's taboo. I know we're told not to snoop. But sometimes your gut knows what your mind won't accept." I opened his messages and saw Haley's name. Dozens of texts. Flirty. Bold. Intimate. Pictures. Nudes. And one message that made me want to scream. "Wish I could fall asleep in your arms tonight. She doesn't appreciate you like I do." I stood there, shaking, staring at the man I thought I knew, sleeping like a baby next to me, while his betrayal burned in my hand. I didn't confront him that night. Couldn't. I needed to understand how deep this went. Over the next few weeks, I became an investigator. Haley wasn't just a fling. She worked at his office. They'd been seeing each other for over a year. He had taken her on trips, ones I thought were for conferences. He bought her gifts, jewelry, lingerie. He told her he was unhappy in his marriage, that I was cold, ungrateful, controlling. He made me the villain in their love story. When I finally confronted him, he didn't deny it. In fact, he barely reacted. He said, "I figured you'd find out eventually." Just like that. No remorse. No guilt. Just inconvenience. He yelled. Cried. I told him to get out. He didn't. Instead, he sat me down and said the most chilling words I've ever heard from another human being. "You need to stop overreacting. You've been making me miserable for years. Haley is kind. She listens. She supports me. If you had done that, maybe this wouldn't have happened." I was speechless. He made his betrayal my fault. And then came the kicker. "She's meeting my family next weekend. I want you to be there." I blinked. Why the hell would I be there? Because it's time we all move forward. There's no reason we can't all be civil. I thought it was a joke. Some kind of sick joke. But it wasn't. I spent that entire week in a fog. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I lost 6 pounds in 4 days. I kept thinking, why is no one seeing this for what it is? His family knew. They'd always known Drew was demanding, controlling, arrogant, but they worshipped him. He could do no wrong in their eyes. When he cheated, they didn't hold him accountable. They blamed me. Said I must have been cold. Said I wasn't fun anymore. His sister even texted me. "You should just let him be happy. You're not the only woman he's ever going to love." I wanted to scream. Instead, I agreed to go to that family dinner. Not because I forgave him. Not because I cared about civility. But because I needed to see it with my own eyes. How far he was willing to go to break me. And I wanted them all to remember my face when I walked out of their lives for good. So when I sat there at that table, being told to apologize to the woman who wrecked my marriage, I smiled. I did. I smiled like I was grateful for the opportunity. And then I said, "You're right. I owe you an apology." Everyone leaned in. Haley tilted her head. Eager. And I said, "I'm sorry you're so broken that you think someone else's husband will fix you." The room went silent. Drew's mouth twitched. His mother gasped. Haley blinked. And I stood up and walked out. Not another word. I drove home. Packed my bags. Called my sister. And I left. That night was the beginning of my escape. But it wasn't the end of the story. Because what Drew did after that, how he tried to control the narrative, how he dragged me through emotional hell to protect his image, made everything that came before look like child's play. When I left that house, I didn't cry. Not right away. I drove home with both hands clenched on the steering wheel, jaw locked, windows rolled up to silence the scream building inside me. That wasn't the kind of betrayal you cry over. That was the kind of betrayal that empties you out. Like a faucet turned all the way open until there's nothing left but air. I got home, packed 2 suitcases, and took only what I needed. My sister Rachel lived 3 hours away, and when I called her, I didn't even get the full sentence out. Just, "Can I?" And she said, "Yes. Come now." I drove in the dark, radio off, headlights low. I kept thinking about Haley's smirk. About how she really thought she won something. About how Drew sat there like he was conducting a press conference, expecting me to smile through it. And worst of all, his mother, Lorraine. She nodded like this was all so reasonable. Like watching your daughter-in-law get publicly shamed was just part of life. Rachel wrapped me in the biggest hug when I arrived. She had a futon set up, wine poured, and tissues in every room. She didn't ask questions that night. Just held my hand and let me sit in silence. I hadn't realized how much noise I'd lived with until it was finally quiet. For the first few days, I didn't respond to Drew's texts. They came like clockwork. "I think we could have handled that better. You embarrassed yourself. You're not being rational, Riley." No apologies. No shame. Just control disguised as logic. And then the calls started. One night, he left a voicemail so calm, so manipulative. I played it for Rachel because I needed to know I wasn't imagining things. "Riley, I know you're hurting. I know this is hard. But you've always had a temper. And I think if you really sit with yourself, you'll see how unfair you've been. Haley didn't ruin our marriage. She showed me what love feels like again. You lost yourself somewhere along the way, And I waited, but you never came back. He ended it with, "We're not the villains here. You just stopped being a wife." I replayed that sentence 20 times. You just stopped being a wife. I almost laughed. Drew used to praise me for being the kind of woman who knew her place. And when I started growing, when I started a business, found my own voice, made friends he didn't choose, he began shrinking me with little cuts. Phrases like, "Not everything needs to be about you. Do you always have to make things difficult? You should try being more like my mom." So I did what women are taught to do. I tried harder, bent more. I shrunk myself hoping it would save us. And then he blamed me for not being whole enough for him to stay faithful. Rachel said something to me on the third night that stuck. He didn't want a wife. He wanted an echo. That hit me like a brick. Got a lawyer. The divorce papers were served 2 weeks later. Drew was furious. He texted, "So this is how you do things. No conversation. No closure." I didn't respond. He called me 17 times in one day. Then he showed up at Rachel's house. She was at work. I was alone. He rang the doorbell 4 times. Knock. Then stood there like he was entitled to be let in. I didn't open the door. I just stood behind it and said, "This is harassment. I'll call the police." He scoffed. "Are you serious?" I said nothing. "Riley, you're being dramatic. We were a family. You don't throw that away." That word, family, it felt like poison coming out of his mouth. I filed a restraining order the next day. Not because I thought he'd hurt me physically, but because I knew the kind of man he was. He'd start with pity, then guilt, then rage, then revenge. I had to get ahead of it. Then came the online version of Drew. 3 days after the papers were served, I started getting messages from mutual friends. They were confused, some even angry. "He said you cheated. He said you lied about the affair to get out of the marriage. He told everyone you were mentally unstable." I saw the post. Passive-aggressive quotes on his Facebook like, "Some people will rewrite the truth to avoid accountability. I gave everything. She gave up." And then worse, photos of him and Haley, captioned with things like, "You're the peace I prayed for." Comments from his friends saying things like, "She's so much better for you. You finally look happy again. You deserve love." My stomach turned. He wasn't just moving on, he was rewriting history. He made me the villain so he could play the victim. Cried that night. Not because I missed him, but because I felt erased. I felt like everything I had endured was being buried under curated photos and lies. I wanted to scream, to post every receipt, every screenshot, every voicemail, but Rachel stopped me. "He wants a reaction. He wants you to look unhinged. Don't give him that power." So I didn't. I stayed quiet. But I started writing everything down, documenting everything, timelines, texts. And then it got worse. One afternoon I got an email from someone I didn't recognize. Subject line, "You deserve to know." The message was from a woman named Vanessa. She used to work with Drew. She wrote, "I don't want to stir anything, but I thought you should know. Haley wasn't the first. I saw him flirt with women constantly. I even think he slept with another coworker named Dana. He used to joke about keeping options open behind your back. I wish I said something sooner. I'm sorry." My hands shook as I read it. Then I got another message, from Dana. Short, cold, straight to the point. It was years ago. I didn't know he was married at first. I'm sorry. 3 affairs. That I knew of. My chest felt like it was caving in. Not because he cheated. I'd already mourned the marriage. But because I had spent so long blaming myself. Wondering what I did wrong. How I could have fixed it. How I failed him. When really, he never intended to be loyal. He loved the power, chase, the secrecy, the image. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a trophy. One he could hide behind and cheat on without consequence. I stared at myself in the mirror that night. I barely recognized the woman looking back. but for the first time in months, I saw fire in her eyes. I wasn't going to let this man write the ending of my story. Not again. I started therapy. I started healing. I started living. But Drew didn't stop. 1 month after our divorce was finalized, he sent me one last message. "I forgive you. I hope someday you can too." I laughed out loud. That was his final trick, flipping the story one more time to make it seem like he was the hero. But here's the thing. I didn't need his forgiveness. I needed my own. And I gave it to myself. I forgave myself for staying too long, for ignoring the signs, for thinking I could be enough to make him loyal. Because the truth is, cheating isn't about the partner. It's about the cheater, their lack of character, their inability to commit, their hunger for control, their need to blame you so they never have to look in the mirror. And now, when people ask what happened between me and Drew, I tell them the truth. He asked me to apologize to his mistress. So I apologized for ever thinking he was worthy of me. That usually shuts them up. But there's still more. Because 6 months after the divorce, Drew made a move so desperate, so calculated, it blew every boundary wide open. And it involved someone I never thought he'd drag into it. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I started to feel like a person again. Therapy was helping. I was journaling, sleeping, laughing at TV shows without feeling like joy was a betrayal to my past self. I'd even started going on quiet dates again, not looking for love, just companionship. Someone to remind me that not all men used love like a leash. And just as I started piecing myself back together, Drew reappeared. Not in person. Not with another voicemail or a dramatic doorstep ambush. This time he came through my best friend. Her name was Megan. We'd known each other since college. She was my maid of honor. My emergency contact. The first person I called when I got the positive pregnancy test 3 years ago. The one that ended in a miscarriage 8 weeks later. She was that friend. She had been there through every part of the divorce. Cried with me. Sent late night "you deserve better" texts. She even helped me block Drew on everything when I broke down and nearly messaged him one night after too much wine. So when Megan texted me, "Can we talk? It's important," I said yes immediately. She came over looking nervous. Wouldn't look me in the eye. Sat on my couch like she was perched on a courtroom bench. And then she said the words I never thought I'd hear. "I've been seeing Drew." My whole body went cold. I laughed. Because what else do you do when your world gets yanked out from under you again? "You're joking." She shook her head. "It wasn't planned. It just happened." I stared at her. The woman who helped me pack my bags when I left him. Who called him a narcissist. Who brought me soup when I couldn't stop crying. "You're seeing the man who destroyed me." She tried to explain. Said he reached out. That he seemed different now. That maybe people can change. That she didn't plan to fall for him. I sat there stunned, 1,000 pieces of my past scattering around the room like glass. He got to her too. Not with love. With narrative. He told her I'd been controlling. That I exaggerated everything. That he was a victim of bitterness. And she believed him. After everything. After watching me unravel for months. She believed him. I asked her one question before I kicked her out. "Did you ever believe me?" She didn't answer. And that was the answer. The betrayal from Megan cracked something that was just starting to heal. I felt like I was grieving a second time. Like someone had dug up the corpse of my marriage and propped it in the corner of the room, watching to see if I'd scream. Blocked her. Blocked him. Again. But this time the sadness turned into something else. Rage. Not the kind that burns fast and leaves you empty. The kind that fuels change. I stopped trying to protect everyone's image. I told my story. I didn't post screenshots or air dirty laundry online. But I started a blog. A place where I could tell the truth, my truth. No names. No pettiness. Just honesty. And people responded. Women I didn't know messaged me, thanking me for putting words to things they couldn't describe. They told me about their own Drews, their own Megans, their own moments of humiliation they thought they had to bury. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about taking my voice back. Then one day I got a letter. Real letter. In the mail. The handwriting looked familiar. Inside was a card. No name. Just a note. I was wrong. I believed the wrong person. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know I see it now. See him. I hope someday you can feel whole again. I hope you already do. It wasn't signed, but I knew it was Megan. I didn't respond. Some apologies are about the sender, not the receiver. I had nothing left to give her. You'd think that was the end. That maybe finally I could breathe. But no. Drew pulled one more trick. 3 months after Megan's letter, I got a call from my lawyer. Did you authorize a background check on yourself through Drew's legal team? I said, what? Of course not. Apparently, Drew had filed for defamation. He claimed my blog had defamed his character and caused reputational damage in his workplace and community. My hands started to shake. He wanted to sue me. He couldn't take my silence. He couldn't take that I'd found peace without him. He wanted control back. Luckily, I had protected myself. I'd never used his name, never disclosed his job or location. Everything was written generically, carefully, safely. And the judge agreed. The case was dropped. But the message was clear. He'd never stop trying to own the story. And that, more than anything, made me realize I had to fully let go. Of the past. Of the trauma. Of the twisted need to make him see what he'd done. Because narcissists don't reflect. They deflect. They don't heal. They hunt. I'd been prey for too long. Now I was a survivor. It's been almost 2 years since that living room ambush. 2 years since I stood in front of the woman who slept with my husband while his family watched and told me to apologize. I think about that moment sometimes. Not with sadness, but as a milestone. The moment I stopped asking to be seen. The moment I started seeing myself. I'm remarried now. His name is Joel. He's quiet, kind, soft around the edges in a way that makes me feel safe. He listens without fixing. He holds space without judging. And best of all, he never makes me feel like I need to shrink to fit his love. We're expecting our first child in 3 months. Sometimes I worry the trauma will find its way back in. That Drew's shadow will creep into this new chapter. But then I remember, shadows don't win. Truth does. And no matter what happens, I'll never again let anyone write my story for me. I always thought closure came in a conversation. That if the person who broke you just sat down, looked you in the eye and finally said, I'm sorry, then everything would click back into place. That the pain would melt. That the scar would close. But I was wrong. Closure doesn't come from them. Comes from you. It's the moment you stop bleeding from wounds you didn't cause. The moment you realize you can build a life where their name never crosses your mind. The moment you take your story back and burn the parts they tried to write for you. And for me, closure didn't look like peace at first. It looked like fury. It looked like rebuilding with trembling hands. It looked like nights where I replayed that dinner table ambush over and over in my head until I had a panic attack in my own living room. But eventually, it looked like calm. The kind that isn't loud. The kind that lives in the quiet places, like walking barefoot across a room I now decorate the way I want. Laughing on my own terms. Loving someone new without the old ghosts echoing in my bones. And one day, I woke up and didn't think of Drew at all. Not his voice. Not his betrayal. Not his mistress. Not even his mother's polite cruelty. He was gone. Not erased, but irrelevant. And that is closure. I started volunteering at a local women's shelter a few months after moving in with Joel. At first, I thought I had nothing to offer. I wasn't a therapist or a counselor. I didn't have money to donate or legal advice to give. But then I sat across from a woman who looked like I used to. Hollow-eyed, jittery, like every sound was a threat, and she said, I don't think I'll ever feel normal again. I told her, you won't, but you'll feel better. And then you'll feel stronger. And one day, you'll look at the version of you that survived. And she'll make you proud. She cried. And I realized, that's what I had to offer. Survival. Proof. Oh. A few weeks later I got a message from someone unexpected. It was Haley. Guess that Haley. The mistress. The reason I had to sit at that godforsaken table and swallow my dignity like it was dessert. Her message was short. I just wanted to say, sorry. For everything. I stared at the screen. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I didn't need anything from her. Not anymore. She was just another character in a story I no longer lived in. I hope she learned. I hope she healed. But it's not my job to know. Some people ask why I share my story. Why I would reopen such deep wounds. Why I would make my pain public. And the answer is simple. Because silence keeps abusers safe. Because so many women are still sitting at metaphorical dinner tables, being told to apologize to people who have broken them. Because someone out there is still convincing herself that if she just bends a little more, he'll love her like he used to. And if my voice can crack that lie for one person, then it was worth it. Now I live on the edge of the coast. Joel and I bought a little house with chipped paint and too many stairs. But it has sunlight in every room, and a creaky porch swing, and the kind of kitchen where music bounces off the walls while dinner burns and no one cares. I plant lavender in the backyard. Sometimes I forget to water it, but it still blooms. It reminds me of me. If you're still watching, thank you. Thank you for sitting with this story. For letting me be seen. And if you're going through something like this, if you've been betrayed, blamed, gaslit, abandoned, or humiliated, let me tell you what I wish someone told me sooner. You're not crazy. You're not too much. You are not hard to love. The people who tried to convince you otherwise, they needed you to be small so they could feel big. But you don't belong in their narrative. Write your own. And don't be afraid to start with this sentence. I deserve more. 'Cause you do. You really, really do.